Okay, so we are going through our form and we're talking about some functions and we're going to talk about some validations for the next 10 minutes. So we sort of ripped through this, very simple, very easy in regard to things we've already done. Not that this is easy per se, but this is things that we've already done. Is I need to never ever do this last curly. Perfect. Is we've got this state of movie. We haven't brought in state yet. Oh, my mouse is going to make me lose my mind. We've not, oh, praise. We've not brought in state yet, so let's bring that in. Perfect. Then we have some state of movie, set movie. It's got a title, year, and a genre. Then we've got all movies in set movie. This is what we're going to keep track of. This is what we've used in order to keep track of the movies that we create. We have our on change, which is handle change, meaning that we are setting our movie. We're grabbing all of the different attributes, right? Because it's an object, we need to make sure that if we didn't have this, it would just reset it to whatever name within each input there was. So we are making sure it's grabbing everything. And then it is saying, hey, whatever input that called this handle change, we're going to grab its name and we're going to create a key. And if the key is not already in here of movie, we're going to take that key and we're going to set its value to whatever was typed. Okay. Fairly simple. Now we need to handle submit. Const handle submit still takes an event, prevent default, set all movies, and then we are resetting our movie so that it is not, so that way it becomes a blank. Now, these are blue, or light blue, I guess dark blue, dark light blue. So which means that we haven't used them. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say on change. That is going to be our change, or I think it's called handle change. Perfect. And I'm actually just going to take that and apply it to all three. Again, this is things, I'm going a little bit quick because this is things that we have already done. Cool. And then same thing, in order for it to actually clear this out, I need to have my value within my input to equal, in this case, I want it to equal the movie dot, and then whatever the actual key is. So in this case, it's movie dot title. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm getting rid of, sorry. I have my extra keyboard and my mouse, and they're making me want to punch a child. So we're just going to go old school. So we're going to say value. I don't really want to punch a child, please don't say anything there. So we're going to say movie dot, I think this one is year. And then obviously we have one more. We're going to say value equals, and then we're going to say movie dot genre. Cool. Great. So right now we've got this information and we are bringing in this information. I see somebody wants me to display a different component. I might get there. Right now, we're not really doing that, but maybe after this, if I have enough time. So we've done everything we've normally done, right? To where we've got some value, we've got some sort of on change. We talked about a ternary operator, right? And where we can say something like, what do we want to say here? I want to say maybe movie. So in this case is movie dot genre, or I think it's, or movie. So if there's a movie, and then if movie dot genre dot length is less than 3, then I want to, this is my ternary, right? I create a p tag that says, hey, give me, genre must be at least 3 characters. And then if this is true, so if it's less than 3, it says, hey, it has to be at least 3 characters. And if not, then null. This might be off. It might say if there's a movie, or maybe this is an and. Yeah, I think that's the case. If there's a movie and its length is less than, that makes more sense. And we can do that same thing. Let's just apply that to the top. So this is our ternary operator, but we saw that this actually prevents us, or this doesn't prevent us from giving bad data, right? From actually doing a component that, or creating a component, or not a component, sorry, creating a movie that doesn't work, right? It doesn't prevent us from doing that. We can still make a movie with bad data. Now, what we can do on my submit, I need to say on submit is going to say handle submit. Perfect. Cool. So now both of these are taken care of. What I can also do is I can have some sort of validator, and we're going to make that a function. So same sort of thing. I'm going to say const. I'm going to call this movie validation. Cool. And it's just going to be an arrow function. And what I'm going to do is I am still going to have this information. And what this is going to do is this is going to be just a check to prevent on the front end. This is what we would call our front end validation. Does this movie actually pass the criteria of what I want to do? So before I even look at this, I want to keep track of, is this a valid movie, right? Is this something that will actually work that I want to save? So I'm going to say let is valid equal true, right? Because I'm saying, cool, I am starting this with the best assumption, right? All is well. This is true. It's valid. Then what I can do is I can go into my condition and say, hey, if the movie.genre.length is less than 3, then I actually want to change this to is valid equals false. And then I can go from there, right? I have this if condition. And this one is just going to return. What I can do is I can just return is valid, but I've got multiple conditions. So what I can say is, if that's the case, there's 2 things I can do. I can put them all together and say genre length is greater than 20. We'll just say less than 3. That makes way more sense. Or movie dot year is less than 1990. 1900. I'm curious. Yeah, so that should work because it's going to compare the 2. We'll get rid of this one. So we're saying, hey, it's got to be at least earlier than the 1900s, or 1900 or earlier. It's got to have a movie length or genre length that's greater than 3, and the movie title length has to be greater than 3 as well. And so what this is doing is this function is saying, cool, let me go in and I'm going to check my current state, right? And if the title length is less than 3, or the genre length is less than 3, or the movie.year is less than 1900, then I actually want to say, no, this isn't valid, right? This does not pass my validation. And I'm going to set is valid equal to false. Then what I'll do is I'm going to return is valid. Right? And so what this is going to do is once this runs, it's going to go into state and it's going to check. And there's another way we can do this. This is kind of the base way. It's going to check and say if any of these conditions, that's what this double pipe is, right? That's just our or. So it's going to say if this one or this one or this one, if any of these 3 are true, it enters into my conditional and it does whatever it says. And in this case, we're saying, hey, is valid now equals false. This is no longer valid. Then after this, it's going to return is valid. Now, what we can do, I need to do that, perfect, is before I even submit and set all movies and add in my movie, I can say if, now this case, this is preventing our, so there's 2 ways we could do it. I want to do this. I'm going to say, okay, only if everything is true, because remember this if movie validation is my function. Remember, when I have parentheses, this is my function call, right? This is calling my function. So my code's going to stop here, and it's going to go and it's going to run this. And this is going to return, and remember, a value or a function, if I were to say like let x equal, some function, whatever that function returns is what x becomes. So in this case, movie validation becomes whatever it returns, which is either true or false. And so what this is doing is this is saying, hey, if this comes back as, and remember, any time in an if statement or a conditional statement, this has to be true. So it's saying, hey, if this is true, which means that it comes and it runs this and it never changes it to false, none of these three are wrong, right? It's greater than 1900, it's greater than 3, and greater than 3 for both. Then it's going to return as valid as true, and it's going to say, cool, it's passed my validation. Now I can go ahead and do all this. And then if I want to, I can say return, like return. We'll just say return for right now. This is, we haven't done navigating yet. And so what we'll actually do is we'll navigate back to this sort of screen. We haven't done that yet, but that's what we'll get to that spot. But I could say, I still want this, or I could say something like this. Pretend that we wanted to have const errors, set errors, right? And just an object of errors. And then I say, hey, if this is true, great. Else, then I say set errors. And then I can say something like, hey, here's this object that it has to be, or just more so, I'd probably just say error. I don't want title. There was an error, right? And so what this is doing is this is going to say, okay, great. If everything is true, then we're going to set movies, we're going to do everything we want. If it's not true, else, right, then we're just going to say, hey, there was an error. And then I can create some sort of, p tag up here that says, that just shows error. And it maps through my errors, or I can show that up here and say that there was an error, right? And then maybe even I empty it and it just shows that there was an error. So I could say something like set errors, and I could still do this. Cool. So now, because this is going to be a list of errors, or this is an error object, so then I could just say something like error. Perfect. So if there's something, let's go ahead and put that error. If not, we'll have it as null. So let's see if this works. I just created this off the cuff. Let's see if this works. CD to client, npm start. See if there's any errors breaking. Not yet. Oh, it's on my iPad. But got a big crucial portion. I didn't bring it in. It's not showing anything. So I say movie form. Perfect. I brought it in. Now let's check. Error was not defined. So let's say, did we call it errors? Yes, we did. So let's see if we can say this. This is, nope. Object's not valid as a React child, object with keys. I'm wondering if I just set it as this. Okay. So let's test it. If I save, it says there was an error, right? And I look at my component and I don't see anything. Movie form, there was an error. That's the only state I have, but there's nothing in my state. But if I said Shrek 2001 comedy and I save, I now get, there's an error because I haven't cleared that out. And then I get Shrek here. So all I would have to do to fix that is at the end of this, I would say set errors to an empty string. Saying, hey, there was nothing, just for this very simple. And then I refresh. There's nothing. Shrek 2001 and comedy. Cool. So I get Shrek. There is no error. I don't see that there's an error. There's no this error. But if I try to save it, we see that there was an error. But if I go to the actual component itself, this validator actually prevented us from saving an empty component. We still just have one. But the minute I say Mario 2023 comedy and I save it, we get a new value. There's no more error because it was valid. Now we're good to go. Okay. I breezed through that. You guys all have this code. Obviously, this is recorded, so you guys will have access to this. But let me just walk through this one more time and then we'll get class started. We've done everything normal. What we did new is we had this const error, and again, this is front-end validations. We had this const errors, set errors, which is just an empty string. We can do, and I'll show you maybe in another class, a little bit more complicated version to where maybe we can do it something like this and basically have different versions that way a little bit more instead of there was an error. It's like, hey, the title was the error or whatever. We can look at that. But for a very basic front-end validation, we can do that. So we created this new state. We also created this function here. Now notice it doesn't have to take in an event because we're not targeting right now which one created the error. We don't need that. So it just is our arrow function. We started it out by saying, hey, we're going to pretend that this is true only until we're told that it becomes false. We have this if statement that checks the three different ones, just like we do in our ternary, our title, our genre, and our year. We say, hey, if any of these are wrong, because we have the two pipes, if any of them, this is our or. If this one or this one or this one are wrong, it enters into my conditional and it actually changes the value to false. And then we return this, right? So we're either returning true or false, right? That's what this function becomes. Then in our handle submit, we say if, and then we actually run our function. And what this is doing is this is saying, basically, if I were to say something like let's validator equal movie validation, validator at that point, validator is either true or false, right? Because this either gives us back true or false. And then it's like if this top part is like if I'm saying if validator equals true, then I want to do something, right? This is just shorthand for doing all of that, right? Because this is just going to return either true or false. So we're saying, hey, if this is true, then I want to go ahead and move forward. Let's set all of our movies, or let's add this to our list. We'll reset it. And we saw, oh, somebody can mute, thank you. And we saw that we can then set our errors. We saw that we had to do that or else it was going to stay persistent. If not, meaning this wasn't true, it returned false, there was an error, we're saying, hey, we want to prevent you from adding to this. Now, in the future, this will be preventing from us even calling our database, because with AWS, anytime you're calling, the more you call a database, the more you can get charged. And so this is even preventing that. We're saving our company money there. We don't have a database yet, so we're just saying, hey, before you even add to our array here. But we're saying else, meaning that there was something, we're just creating the string. We're setting this state of set error to the string of there was an error. And then we're also resetting our movie and saying try again, basically. That is it. That's all we've done. Any questions on this? Any quick questions? I want to get started with class, but any quick questions? You guys put a 1 in the chat if this makes sense. Put a 0 if it does not. And this is not the only time we'll ever talk about this either. And this is what we call our front end validations. Now, for your exam, you don't have to do these. So you'll just have to do back end
that went into the return statement.
This one?
The one below.
Oh, this guy?
Yeah, underneath the return statement.
Oh, this is just our normal form. The only thing that's different is we also added in and said, hey, if there's an error, if errors, right? So that's what this is saying. Like, does error equal anything? If so, then I want to show the error that just says there was an error. If not, just leave it as null. And that's where we get that p tag.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay. I'm gonna stop the recording here. We can obviously talk more about this. Today's a pretty simple class, so we might even be able to talk about it. But I'll stop the recording here and then we'll get started with class.